So this is going to be a short introduction and demo video to the video circuit in Kerr, which is going to be available in my shop shortly. So I just wanted to show you what it looks like, how to set it up with Recur, and give a little overview of what it does. So this is just the circuit board to start with, and yeah, this is an extension to Recur, a Raspberry Pi video sampler which I designed. So this circuit is only going to be useful to you if you already have Recur. And yeah, Recur is not available to purchase, or there's no plans to sell it at this point, mainly due to the Raspberry Pi shortage, but also just because it's not a priority for me right now. But I want to make these circuits available, particularly for people who already have Recur and might want to upgrade it. So that's what this video is about. Yeah, I'll start by giving a little overview of what Recur is, just for people who need that context, and then we'll look at how to integrate it with the extension circuit and what that adds, why you might want this, and also why you might not want it. So yeah, let's take a look here at Recur. So what you'll see here is the three parts that you would need to make a Recur. So this is a Raspberry Pi 3 and 3.5 inch LCD screen and the numpad controller. So yeah, this is Recur, and I'll just show you quickly what that does. So yeah, you assemble this by attaching the screen to the GPIO pins and powering it up with a USB, micro USB plug. And yeah, to get composite video out of a Raspberry Pi 3, you're going to need one of these adapters. So this is a TRRS adapter on one end and the composite video on the other. You might need one of these little exchanger things, because some of these cables have the ground on a different ring than what the Pi expects. So yeah, this is how you get composite video out. Okay, so I have just set up Recur in a configuration that I would often use it. So I have a capture card going into USB, which has a composite video camera pointing at me going into Recur. So the kind of feature that I want to talk about is the shader player, and you can use this to generate video and to process video. So an example of that is just shown here. This is running a shader called Acid Zigzag. So this video is being being generated by Recur. And the thing about shaders is that you can pass input parameters to control the shaders into it. So for example, we can change these input parameters using the keypad, and you'll see that this will have changed the way that the shader looks. But this method of passing input parameters in by discrete button presses is less ideal than what we would really want, which is continuous inputs, so like a knob or a slider that would give us control over the parameters. So the way that I would usually do this is by using a USB MIDI controller. So here you should be able to see what I would use, which is the Korg Nano Controller 2. So you can plug this straight into the USB of Recur, and then this gives us control over the parameters via these sliders. And this is a much more natural way to control shader parameters. So that's an example of controlling parameters of a generative shader. We also can use it on processing shaders. So here we've got the feed of me, and then I can put it in a shader effect. which gives me control over the different inverse levels. The wobble effect, which gives us control over the displacement of the pixels. Yeah, these are examples of why you might want shader control over recur parameters. And yeah, USB MIDI is kind of the most common and the easiest solution to this. However, in Kerr, the extension circuit gives us some alternative ways to control these parameters. Okay, so this is how you set up recur, the video sampler, with incur, its extension board. Separate the Raspberry Pi from the screen, and then on the incur board, on the bottom, you'll see this 2x20 GPIO pin header, and so the Raspberry Pi pins should slot into this header like this. And then the screen should go in the same place that it was before, but on the top pins of the incur circuit like this. Now, you might have noticed that I have some screws in here. So I've got one in each corner of the incur board, and these are just M3 screws, 25 millimeters long. And so this just offsets it enough that the Raspberry Pi will not be touching the ground when it is sitting flat. And then also I've got another screw here just on the Pi, same type, M3, that you can use to just fasten it in place on the board itself if you want a little more reinforcement here. And also another M3 screw coming up from the board and just kind of placing against the screen to give that screen a bit of reinforcement also. So there's different ways you can set this up. This is just the way that I have it for me now. But yeah, then basically the board's ready to go. The final thing you can do is connect up this RCA jack for the composite video out. So as I mentioned earlier, usually you need to use these kind of adapters to get the composite video out, but the incur circuit gives you the option to kind of break out the composite video into an RCA. So the way that works is you just have a little pin that's soldered upside down on the incur circuit, and you need to just solder a little jumper that's from the composite video pin on the Raspberry Pi board, and this just plugs into this little jumper, and that just puts our composite video out here, which makes it a little easier when you're patching with composite video in general. So now this is the way that the board is set up. You can plug it in and take a little look at how to control those same parameters from this position. So now we have the incur board hooked up to recur, and the video is coming in through the USB capture card, and video out is coming now through the front panel RCA jack into the television that you're seeing me on now. So let's show you how to set up the incur extension inputs. So the first thing that we'll do is enable it in the settings. Now you probably can't really see the screen text on here very well, but yeah, you can always refer to the longer recur video for this stuff. It's all in there and it's better captured and explained. But just for now, we go into user inputs, and the setting we want to enable is called analog inputs. So we turn this on, and now with analog inputs on, we can go to a shader. For example, let's go to our invert effect shader again, and now we can see that turning these knobs on the front of the incur circuit then straight away gives us continuous control over these parameters. So that's, I guess, one of the advantages of incur is you get control of these parameters straight on the board without any MIDI controller or anything else needed. So that's 4 pots for analog input. There's also 4 control voltage inputs, which I'll show. I've just plugged in a signal generator from my computer into the CV input on the in-cur and given it a sine wave into this parameter, which is now causing this this motion we can see on the screen. So I can also change other parameters manually. I can even adjust the parameter manually itself, which is being sequenced. And yeah, we can try this on different effects as well. So yeah, and the frequency to make it go faster, or I guess feature of in-cur to show you is the old style DIN5 serial MIDI input. So as we've already seen, Recur can handle USB MIDI natively without the addition of any circuitry. So modern MIDI devices will work just fine. But if you have an older device that only has this style of MIDI, this is where this extension circuit comes in handy. So just to demonstrate this, I'm going to use the Deluge here, which is a new device. It's like a synthesizer, sequencer, and sampler, but it has this old DIN style MIDI output as well, so it's a good thing just to test it with. So I'm going to plug in one side of my MIDI cable into the in-cur and the other side into the MIDI out of the Deluge. And now that that's plugged in, I'm just going to navigate to the settings and enable in the user input setting there's MIDI input, so we put that on serial, and then then go back to a shader. Now on the Deluge we go to the MIDI mode, and to do control voltage here we just need to hold down one of these and put it on CC, and then we should see that this knob now gives us control over the color offset, and we can make this knob give us control over, for example, the brightness. The advantage of having control over something like the Deluge is that we can actually record these sequences, so I can press record here and then put in a movement of color which I like, and then that will play itself back without any input from me, that sequence. So that's the way you can use Recur in a larger setting to sequence it or whatever. And again, you could do this with a Deluge just using USB MIDI, but there's some devices that will benefit from having the serial MIDI added to the circuit. So that's pretty much everything that the in-cur circuit adds. So just to summarize, it adds 8 analog inputs, 4 knobs for direct control, and 4 control voltage inputs for sequence control. It also adds old style MIDI over serial, and it adds a breakout for the video Raspberry Pi composite video out. So that's the in-cur circuit. If you just want control over the shader parameters and you're looking for the easiest way, I wouldn't recommend this. I think that MIDI controllers are a good general solution for this, and these can be almost a similar price. But if you want a custom solution specifically built for Recur, which keeps everything kind of in this little form factor, which breaks out the pins, which connects to the GPIO, so it doesn't use any extra USB, then consider building or buying this project to add to your Recur.